Allow me to paint you a picture. Imagine that there's a bank in your town or city. It's not unlike other banks in some respects. You deposit your savings and you get some rate of return. At this particular bank, the rate of return is competitive with other banks, maybe even a little better. But that's where the similarities end. You're used to a bank where you don't have to think about the internal workings of the bank. Not at this bank. This bank has different rules. The Federal Reserve is constantly monitoring its every move, and if the bank breaks the wrong rules, Jay Powell sends a guy with a flamethrower into the vault to incinerate the deposits, including yours. Would you ever deposit your money in this bank instead of a normal FDIC insured institution? No, you would not. And that's why the Ethereum Merge is the best thing that's ever happened to Cardano. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the huge problem with slashing in the post-merge Ethereum world, a CFTC commissioner publicly excoriating the SEC over crypto, some new Djed info, and an interesting new tracker on Cardano Twitter. If you immediately notice that this is in fact not a real Benji at all, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. I've said it many, many times on this channel, but the fundamentally flawed decision that was made by the architects of the roadmap of Ethereum was slashing. If you don't know what slashing is, it's a logical conclusion to come to. It's pretty logical to think, hey, we have certain behaviors we need to enforce on a blockchain in proof of stake. Why don't we just take away people's money if they don't engage in those behaviors? And then you get into all of the proof of stake related things. You have to think to yourself, okay, but if we just slash the funds of the stake pool itself, maybe they won't care because maybe they won't have, they'll have more in delegation than they do funds. You get into all these different questions. And so eventually you could logically come to the conclusion, we need to slash the funds of the delegators as well, so that people will also, not only will the stake pools try their best not to, engage in any of these behaviors we want to enforce against, but also delegators won't even want to delegate to a pool that might engage in those behaviors. It's all pretty logical. As long as there's no alternative, as long as slashing is the only way to enforce the right behaviors in proof of stake. And when Ethereum was first talking about this, we kind of, it was unclear, at least to the general public, it was kind of unclear how proof of stake was going to work. It was unclear whether there would be something that would work as well as or better than slashing. The problem they've gotten themselves into now is that blockchains like Cardano exist, and we've been running for a long time now. We've got some years under our belt now, and it turns out that Ouroboros works just fine. We haven't had the downtime of blockchains like Solana. We haven't had problems with stake pools engaging in the bad behaviors that might be malignant to a proof of stake blockchain. It turns out there is an alternative. You don't have to go down the slashing road, but Ethereum is still going in that direction. That's what they'll end up with after the merge. Here, Stick with Pride puts it well. He says, slashing, also known as self-destructing coins, akin to exploding die packs in your nest egg, is not the future of staking nor sound money. Modern blockchains like Cardano, Avalanche, Algorand, and Hedera use sophisticated incentives instead of simple destructive ones. And down below here, he points out an interesting piece of a discussion with Emin Gunsirer, the most notable figure in Avalanche. He says slashing mostly hurts honest actors, not attackers. And this is a good summary of what Emin Gunsirer was getting at. I think he's probably correct. He makes the argument that no one would ever make an attack on a proof of stake blockchain with slashing. It wouldn't make any sense because you would have to have a large stake in order to make your attack, and then you would face the hazard that it gets slashed. It wouldn't make any sense to attack a blockchain like that. So he says the attackers are not actually going to attack, which is good, and they're not actually going to get slashed. Good for the attackers. The people who are going to get slashed are going to be normal, honest users of the system through, some kind of error, some kind of negligent or other error. Honest mistakes are going to lead to the slashing, not these malignant attacks it's meant to prevent. I say this as someone who's never held any Avalanche assets ever, but I think he's right. I think what we've got going on here is an inability or unwillingness to respond to the emergence of, let's just call them better ideas. I mean, it's really the emergence of better technology, but it's really the emergence of better ideas. Something like Ouroboros is a better idea than slashing. Why? Go ahead. When both are running side by side, go ahead and pitch this to your mom. Go pitch your mom on putting her retirement in Ethereum staking versus Cardano staking. Tell her one can be extremely secure. She could hold her assets on a hardware wallet. In the other, if this mysterious stake pool that she won't really know anything about, if this stake pool, she won't even know what a stake pool is, but this third party she doesn't really know anything about, if they make a mistake, she could lose her funds. I don't think she's going to choose that alternative. And that's a lot of the mainstream. We act like the mainstream is going to come into crypto and make decisions based on the information we ourselves have. And part of that is based on the name recognition and history of Ethereum. But people coming into the space, maybe there will be some name recognition in Ethereum there for them. But when you start, asking them to deposit any amount of money they actually care about, and you tell them, hey, in this choice, in choice A, you could lose those funds if, this faceless third party you don't really know makes a mistake. And in choice B, that's not possible. It's going to be very difficult to talk them into the Ethereum choice. By the way, that was just a hypothetical. I was not actually suggesting that you talk your mom into putting her retirement into crypto. Don't do that. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, all that makes sense, but there are a huge number of Ethereum fans who are not going to hesitate to stake all of their Ether once they are post-merge. And you're absolutely correct. But this is the island, the pond, and the ocean thing. It's all relative. When we say there are a huge number of Ethereum guys, that's true comparatively, compared to the other Gen 3 blockchain, race entrants. There are a huge number of people in Ethereum, but that's not where the real growth is going to come from. That's the pond. The real growth is going to come from the ocean, from people who are new entrants to the crypto space, the mainstream, this mythical event where the mainstream suddenly embraces crypto. They're going to come into it without this predisposition toward Ethereum as sort of like the historical segment leader. They're going to come into it, and when they find out that they could lose their funds by participating in choice A, but not in choice B, it's going to take a lot of talking to get them to go in the direction of choice A. That's the ocean. That's where the real growth is going to come from. While we're talking about growth, it looks like new CFTC Commissioner Caroline D. Pham has already grown into her new position so much that she's completely comfortable publicly excoriating the SEC over their sort of crypto categorization strategy in this SEC versus Wahi thing. So this is the case with the Coinbase insider trading. She says the case SEC versus Wahi is a striking example of regulation by enforcement. This, of course, echoes what we talked about yesterday with the congressional hearing. The SEC complaint alleges that dozens of digital assets, including those that could be described as utility tokens and or certain tokens relating to decentralized autonomous organizations, are securities. The SEC's allegations could have broad implications beyond this single case, underscoring how critical and urgent it is that regulators work together. Major questions are best addressed through a transparent process that engages the public to develop appropriate policy with expert input through notice and comment rulemaking pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act. Regulatory clarity comes from being out in the open, not in the dark. And she's making a really good point here. So when you've got actual malfeasance, as it appears we have in this Wahi case, you've got actual, it looks like we've got actual intentional insider trading going on at Coinbase. These are the kinds of cases where regulators who want to expand their jurisdiction, they're going to try to do so in cases where you've got actual malfeasance, because nobody wants to say anything that would support the position of the bad guy. If someone's obviously the bad guy, nobody wants to come out and be like, yeah, but, everybody's like, oh, he's bad. Don't do anything to support his cause. So in this case, the SEC has an opportunity to assert that all of these assets, even if some other people would call them utility tokens, even if they're DAO tokens, whatever categories they fit into, the SEC saw a great opportunity to sort of paint with a broad brush and say that these are all securities, because you want to do that in this kind of case, not a case where you have an enforcement action against someone who hasn't engaged in something that everybody would find to be, slightly reprehensible. I also love how she took the last paragraph and spent it talking about what a great job the CFTC has done for the last 12 years. Obviously, she is fully aware that there's kind of a raging debate going on in Washington and elsewhere about how to divide up the crypto world. And there's definitely a certain movement toward dividing up the crypto world into commodities and securities. And obviously the SEC would be in charge of securities and the CFTC would be in charge of commodities. And it's a question as to how much of our world fits into the one camp or the other. I think our commissioner here is highly aware of that. And she's, making a little jab and doing her best to make the argument that maybe you want a lot of that world, as much of that world as possible, in the CFTC's camp and not in the SEC's camp. Man, we've been waiting a long time for Djed. This little pillar down here, which I understand is supposed to represent the hieroglyph for Djed. That little pillar, what is it? What is the actual meaning? Stability, I think. That little pillar, whatever it is, it's supporting a lot of hopes and dreams for the Cardano ecosystem and what can happen here with DeFi. Coty says, as we are getting closer to the Djed mainnet release, we believe it's time to share more information about the Djed protocol and more specifically about its fee structure. So we know there are other projects to build stablecoins in Cardano, but obviously Djed is the most high-profile one. So I think we've been a little starved of information about what was going on with Djed. Obviously, they're waiting for the same kinds of things that almost the entire Cardano DeFi space is waiting for, with Fossil, SIPs 31 through 33, and of course, pipelining, all the things, but especially those SIPs 31 to 33, like we've discussed many times on this channel. It's often been observed that the rules make the sport. I think it's equally true in DeFi that the fees make the protocol. Here's a Medium article from Coty about exactly how the fees are going to work in Djed. I'm not going to go through all the mechanics of Djed and Shen and how everything works. We've done that a couple different times in previous videos. You can go back and watch those if you don't understand how Djed and Shen work. But here are the fees. Djed mint fee, 1.5%. Djed burn fee, 1.5%. Here are the Shen fees, 0.2% to mint, 0.5% to burn. Djed operational fee of 0.5%. Shen initial price, Shen minimal price, minimum reserve ratio of 400%, and max reserve ratio of 800%. This is consistent with what it looked like it was going to be on these last two numbers, the minimum reserve ratio and the maximum reserve ratio. Last time we examined this issue. But if you're interested in Djed, I would take a close look at how exactly these numbers are going to work out, because I think it's going to have a pretty big impact on how this whole Djed Cardano stablecoin ecosystem works out. Finally, there is a new tracker account in Cardano Twitter. This is the Cardano Heroes of Decentralization account at ADA Heroes. You can see fittingly, it has a nice image of a purple whale using its phone. I think it's a phone, not a tablet. It looks too big to be a phone, but we're talking about a whale here. So it's a whale phone, and he's got a cape. I like the logo. They say this is the most impactful Cardano tracker that celebrates whales moving from multiple pool operators to single pools, bringing value by decentralizing stake. If you're not aware, there are certain types of, I think 99% of you know this, but there are stake pools in Cardano that are actually many stake pools in a lot of cases. And then there are single pools. The Army of Spies stake pool falls into this single pool category, and single pools do in fact bring value to the Cardano ecosystem by helping to decentralize our proof of stake system. So here you can see the account is already quite busy reporting moves of whales from these multi-pools to single pools. So I think this is good. Anything we can do to help increase the decentralization of our system will be very good for us in the short, medium, and long terms. I hope you're going to have another awesome summer weekend. I'm going to try to get outside and do a few things myself. I will talk to you soon.